Good morning, everybody. At least in California, good morning. Good afternoon if you are on the East Coast. Glad to have you in here for a live cast again today. And we're going to do some things that people had been calling this week and sending me some emails concerning some due diligence. If you'll remember last week, we talked about what do we consider how much we can sell a performing second for after we get it performing. And we spent quite a bit of time. I think a lot of people were happy that we did, because now they see the opportunity that exists in second position. And but over the course of this last week, we've gotten a lot of questions concerning what exactly do you guys use when you're doing your due diligence? What are you looking at? What are the categories that really are important to you? And so I thought that today might be a good opportunity for us to go through what we look at from a due diligence point of view to decide how much we're going to pay for a note and whether or not we even want to buy it. So that we're going to spend some time doing that today. I think one of the reasons is that if you're gonna get into this business, and if you're gonna get into it in a very professional way, you need to come up with some policies and procedures of running your business, because as your business grows, it outgrows you. It outgrows your ability to do all of the parts that are required to make it a success. And due diligence is one of those. And one of the things that we learned fairly early on was that it takes more than one person to do due diligence very rapidly on a portfolio of notes, if that portfolio notes could have as many as 200 notes on it, let's say, or possibly even more. And what happens then is that if you have more than one person that's doing the due diligence and trying to arrive at a price or a decision on whether or not you're going to buy it, what happens is you end up getting 2, 3, 4 different answers, and that just is not acceptable in this business. So what you need to do is you need to come up with a procedure to do the due diligence. And then another question arose this week based upon what we did last week, and that was, can I talk about an IRR, or an internal rate of return? And so we're going to talk that first. I'll give you a little insight into how we use internal rate of return and how it differs from a return on investment. So first of all, I would like to thank you. I would like to talk to you just to say thanks to Don Rickenbaugh. I don't know how many of you people are aware of Carson City, Nevada, rapidly becoming the note capital of the world. The note queen moved to Carson City, and the note queen being Don Rickenbaugh. And we have an office in Carson City, and I didn't realize just how important Carson City was to the note business until I found out that Don had moved there. Well, last week, Don and I had an opportunity to meet. Actually, Sabrina Allen, our asset manager, and Ingrid Maddox, our servicing manager, met with Don in Carson City. And I just wanted to say, Don, thank you for the opportunity to finally sit down and meet. I know that we had talked on the phone several times over the past few years. For those of you that are interested in seller financing and seller finance notes, I strongly suggest that you get to know Dawn. She is, as far as I am concerned, probably the foremost expert in seller finance notes, especially having done business in the jungle of Southern California. So if you're interested, visit her website at www.notequeen.com. She's a wealth of information on seller finance notes. And if you're interested in developing your own portfolio of seller finance notes, she's a good source to have. So again, thank you, Don, and look forward to many more visits with you in Carson City. So the first thing that I'd like to go over is the internal rate of review, the internal rate of return that is calculated. Now, what is the difference between an IRR and an ROI, a return on investment? Well, the difference is that primarily the difference is that an IRR gives you a rate of return based upon a 1-year time frame. So if you could easily get a 20% return, let's say in 3 months, and a return on investment would be 20%, but an annualized return would be far more than that 20%. So when you're comparing returns on notes, you need a standard in order to compare a return from one type of note or one note versus another type of note or another note. So if you're looking at a rate of return versus two first mortgages, you should calculate a return on investment and an internal rate of return. And the internal rate of return would give you, no matter how long that asset was kept or how fast you turned it, will give you a rate of return that you can compare to another asset that you didn't keep for the same amount of time, but you get a figure that you can compare. So this example here shows you two different properties. I'm sorry, the 123 Main Street in Gresham, Oregon, that's a second, and I have put first. Should be a second. So the first line is just the addresses of the property, the loan position. The first one is in Orangevale, California, which is our neighbor of ours. Fair Oaks and Orangevale share a border, so it's just a suburb of Sacramento. The rate on that first was 7%. The rate on the second was 11.84%. The loan balance at the purchase, $153,311 versus wow, I had made some changes to this, and I must have copied the wrong thing. So I've got some wrong figures in here. Anyway, I'll give you that formula before we leave today. So because I want to give you the correct information on those two notes. So what I want to do today is go through some of the due diligence that people have asked for, so that everybody seems to be on the same page. And if you are going to hire some personnel to help you do due diligence, or if you're going to farm your due diligence out to somebody that does it on a regular basis, you have some ground rules on what you're going to be looking for. So if you have located a seller, and I think one of the things that we do, Larry, who works our pricing desk, is on Distressed Pro. If you're not familiar with the Distressed Pro, DISTRESSEDPRO.com, you can sign up for that. It's one of the tools that we use and suggest that you would use to locate banks who are capable of selling delinquent portfolios. So there's some little education on that website that tells you how to use the website and how to go about calling banks or contacting banks to see if they have anything to sell. So after you have located that bank and you have worked out an agreement where you are going to receive a tape, typically you'll have somewhat of a short time to do your due diligence on that tape. And by due diligence, we're most concerned about determining what the tape consists of and how much are we willing to pay for it. So there are some certain categories or certain information that we have to have in order to make a good judgment on pricing, or if we even want to buy it. Now, typically when we get a tape, we will buy virtually everything that's on that tape. It's just a matter of how do you price it. For example, there may be loans on that tape where the borrower is in bankruptcy. Would you just throw that out? Well, we won't. We'll price it, but we'll price it low. And that's one of the things that we would be looking for. So I'd like to kind of go through this. And it's something that you as a note investor, when you're hiring people, you can put a procedure together that says, all right, Joan, you're going to be my due diligence expert, and these are the things that we need to look for when we're doing our due diligence. Now, a lot of what we have here is based on our experience, and you can use our experience if you like, or you'll become more experienced as you go along. But some of the decisions that we make are based upon history that we have been able to take care to develop over the course of the years that we've been in business. So the first thing that we look at, of course, is the unpaid principal balance. That is, how much is the note, how much is left on the note to pay. And our sweet spot, yours may and probably will differ. Our sweet spot is on a first $150,000. We like to see a first for $150,000 unpaid principal balance. On a second, we like to see somewhere in the $75,000 range. Now, why? Well, as you get into this business, you're going to realize that it costs you just as much to collect a $10,000 note as it does to collect a $100,000 note. So you're spending your time contacting the borrower, doing a workout situation, and it takes you just as same number of hours to do that $150,000 note as it does to do that $15,000 note. So if you're going to put a value on your time, the higher the unpaid principal balance, the more you're going to earn per hour, so to speak. So we like, those are two sweet spots that we like: $150,000 on the first, $75,000 on the second. And remember, that's not property value; that's unpaid principal balance is what we're looking for. And then we're looking at the arrears. How long has it been since this note has been paid? The higher the arrears, the better. To a certain point. If over 5 years has gone by since a payment has been made, we would not consider 6, 7, 8 years as being better than 5 years. But the higher the arrears, the better, because we're not going to price based on arrears. We're going to price based on market value for the first and unpaid principal balance on the seconds. And therefore, we have a chance of collecting some of that arrears money that is, I guess you can look for it as just gravy. So Then you want to look if it's a second that we're looking at, we want to look at the combined loan to value. That is the first and the second. Is there equity? Is there equity above the first? Is there equity above the first and second together? Is the second covered? There's excuse me, we have three tranches that we take a look at here. The first is where the first and the second added together, the unpaid principal balance of the two. If we're looking at a second, is the value of the property more than the combined loan to value of the first and the second? If that is true, then we have a very, very good second to purchase there. The second one we look at is where the first is less than the combined loan to value, but when you add the second to it, you exceed the loan, combined, you exceed the market value with the combined loan to value. But if you buy the note, the second, at a substantial discount, you have created a spread over the equity in between the first and the second. The third one tranche is no matter what you do, the house remains underwater, and usually the first is so far underwater that you can't make it up by buying the second on a discount. So those are the three tranches. Now, interestingly, our history has been that when you're looking at these on a tape, while we will price them differently, it's really hard to determine which loan is going to pay off. It may take us just as long or longer to do a workout on a loan where the first and is quite a bit lower than the market value. But there is a confidence factor there that if you did have to foreclose, you have some room to make some money on your second. But as far as a workout is concerned, it's really hard to tell. Some of the ones that look to be the worst on paper are the ones that turn out to be the easiest to collect from a homeowner or set up a workout on. So then we take a look at the original loan value if you're looking at a loan that had a higher loan value and all of a sudden and what you're buying is substantially lower, then you know that the homeowner has been paying on this and has paid it down quite a bit, and that is a very good sign of emotional equity, that the person wants to stay in their house. They've been there a long time, they're attached to it, they don't want to leave. Also, take a look at the origination date of the note. The origination date is when the original note was written, and if it's the longer, the better. Again, up to a point. Again, the longer the homeowner has been in the house, the more attached they are to it. And so the origination date becomes important. The maturity date, when is the note paid off? Or, and very, very importantly, what is the maturity date of the note? Is there a balloon? And you have to be careful. If you have a very short maturity date, especially on the first, it very possibly could have a real hard time being refinanced right now. So you want to adjust your pricing dependent upon the maturity date of the first. Also, take a look at the interest rate. The higher the interest rate, the better, because you have more room to do a workout. If you've got a 4% interest rate going in, it's hard to give the borrower a really good, what they would think, deal if you can only reduce it by 2% or 3%. So what's the loan status if you're buying a second? What's the first status? Is it performing? Are they paying on the first? Are they erratically paying on the first? Or is it delinquent? Is there bankruptcy? You need to look at PACER. And is it in foreclosure? You need to find out whether it's in foreclosure. Not that you would not want to buy it, possibly. You possibly would want to buy one in foreclosure, but you're going to pay a very, very low price for it. You need to take a look at other liens. Are there other liens on the property? Is there property tax? Is there an IRS lien? Are there utility liens? Be careful, especially of water. Water is a really tough one to get rid of. What's the credit score of the homeowner? Do they have anything to lose by in their credit score by not paying their payments? What's the file condition? I think we showed some files at one time during these live casts that were in pretty pathetic shape. So if you can determine what the file condition is, you want to do that. Are there notes available on who was doing the servicing on that note of the file? Are there notes that indicate what was done with the borrower? And sometimes you'll find that there's a reason given for the default if you can get those notes. For example, medical problem, lost a job, now employed. All of those things would indicate a value that you could attach to that note. Now, if you really want to become sophisticated on this, you can give a matrix score to each one of these categories. For example, you may say that an unpaid principal balance of $150,000 is your sweet spot, and you could, let's say, assess that value of 5. Anything below that, you would gradually decrease. So 100,000 might be a 4, 60,000 might be a 3, 40,000 might be a 2, and anything below 40,000 would be a 1. And you could assess each of these categories a matrix, and then at the end of that, you can add that matrix up, and you would have a category of, let's say that you ended up with 125 points, and 125 points equaled a 50% value on the market value. So you would place a 50% is what you would be willing to pay. The problem with doing tapes and pools on due diligence is that you don't have a lot of time to get them ready. You're given maybe 3 to 5 days, and you need to come up with a price, an indicative price of what you're going to pay. These are the financial data that you would look at. The next thing you would do is you would look at the collateral, the home itself that is supporting the lien. So the first thing that you would want to look at, or that we would recommend you look at, is where is it located? Is it in a judicial state or a non-judicial state? Judicial being a state where in order to foreclose on a property, you actually have to file a lawsuit. Or is it a non-judicial state? About half and half of the states in the U.S. are judicial and half are non-judicial. A non-judicial state, although it's running a little faster or a little slower today than the law requires, can be very fast. For example, it can happen in Texas in 21 days. Very unlikely these days that would happen. But the state is very important. One thing else that you ought to look for when you're looking at a state is Do you have access to an attorney in that state? Because one of the procedures that you might have to take for an exit strategy is to foreclose, or at least initiate foreclosure. Do you know if you have an attorney in that state that will do that for you at a reasonable rate? Secondly, you're going to look at the city. Now, there are some cities that you're going to want to be very cautious on, and there are cities that have been very, very hard hit by this recession that we had, and property values have actually plummeted, and there's a lot of vacancies and properties sitting unoccupied and really in various states of distress. You want to be sure that you're not buying a tape that has all those properties in that category, or you could end up with owning property that you really don't want to own. When was the home built? Your collateral is a lot better if the house was built, let's say, after 1960 than prior to 1960. Is the house vacant or is the house occupied? Very, very important. How do you find that out? We talked about active rain. If you can find a real estate agent in that particular market to go out and drive by and give you just to tell you whether it looks like it's vacant or occupied, you're very far ahead of the game, because if it's vacant, you want to know that, because if you buy that tape, if you buy that note, you got to do something very quickly. In fact, just yesterday, we received some notification on properties that are located in Chicago where the owner is not taking care of the property, and there's now penalties and fees that are being assessed. And in order to clear that property up, those fees and penalties are going to have to be paid someday. So find that out going in, and try to find out whether or not that city has some onerous laws that can cause the penalties to rise very, very quickly. You want to know what the condition is. Again, the BPO, the broker's price opinion, can help you out there. If you can have an agent go by and tell you it looks like the house is being very well taken care of, which is a little pride of ownership, which means the homeowner definitely wants to stay in their house. That certainly adds value to the note. In addition to that, in most cases, the seller of this tape is going to put in a value of the property. They're going to put in how much that they believe the property is worth. What's the fair market value? And that will have, the date of that will have a very large impact on what you're going to assess it for, because the property probably has gone down in value since the lender or the seller of this tape has given a BPO on it. I'll give you an example. We just took a look at several notes that we had put offers in on. Larry took a look at the notes. We made offers on the notes. The offers were accepted. And then we have a period of time that we can really do a thorough due diligence on them. And we went out and had our own BPOs done on the properties, and found that most of the properties that we had bid on, the value of the property was less than 50% of what the seller's BPO said it was. Very significant difference, and you're going to find that to be quite prevalent when you're buying these notes. How delinquent are the property taxes? You need to take the property taxes into consideration, because if you take that property back, you're going to take it back subject to the property tax. Now, as we mentioned last week, it's not that important on the Internal Revenue Service liens, because usually they can be removed, but we would probably discount it somewhat with an IRS lien. But we've had fairly good success of removing IRS liens from the property. They don't forgive the debt, they just remove it from the property so that the property can be moved. Find out what the rental rate is in the market. You may end up owning this home, and one of the exit strategies may be to keep it as an REO and rent it. So you want to know what the rental market is like, and when you know what the rental market is like, you can maybe project how much you can get in rent over the course of a year or 18 months. And that influences how much you're going to pay for the property. If it's in an area where people just won't rent, that's another meter to guide you on how much you're going to want to pay. A good source to find out is a website called Rent-A-Meter, and you can put in the address of the property and it'll tell you basically what the market is in rents for that area. The other thing you want to look for is HOAs. These are extremely important and becoming more and more important every day. The HOAs, especially in Florida and Nevada, now take precedent over even a first lien. So we lost a house recently, within the last 6 months, to foreclosure to an HOA in Florida. We were not aware that it was being foreclosed upon. We are negotiating with the HOA, and I think we're going to probably end up paying the HOA's fees and getting the house recorded in our name. But you have to be very careful, because both of those states have ruled in favor of the HOAs, putting them in first position. And that can be devastating to a portfolio. So be very, very careful. What does your seller expect as far as the dollars or the price that they're looking for? A lot of times you're going to see some you wonder where they came up with these prices. And maybe before you really do a great deal of your due diligence and waste a lot of time on it, you may want to find out from some other investors possibly, or call the seller of the tape themselves and say, how did they price this? Where did they get these expectations? Because there are some that are just so out of line, it's not worth doing the due diligence on. And then one thing that a lot of people don't look for, but I think it's very, very important, is that you should be out there, you should become an expert on the government programs and all the refinancing and modification programs that are available to homeowners today. Because one of the very, very strong points in your favor is to help a homeowner, if you're buying a second, to help a homeowner get their first modified or refinanced under one of these government programs, or there's local programs, there's charities, there's all kinds of different places that you can get modifications or refinancing done. If you're buying a first, there would be nothing better than to buy a first at a discount and get it refinanced through a government program and get paid off. And some of them are just spectacular. So those are some of the areas that we would suggest that you look for when you are doing your due diligence. It's very important that you're very thorough here. Do not cut corners. If you do, you'll pay for it. So that should help you out in doing your due diligence. If you have questions, please give me a call and or send us an email, and we'll try to help you through this program. I would like to say that we are having a boot camp in Orlando. We'll cover a lot of the due diligence there. We'll show you exactly how we do it, what tools we use. We're going to be in Orlando May 15th to 17th. We'll cover every aspect of the note business. And if you're going to get in this business, there's no such thing as having too much training or too much education. We want to show you what we do to make this business successful. We want to show you how we raise money. By the way, next week, we're going to have a young man on who has put together a fund and raised $1 million in a very short period of time. They're fully invested now. He's going to talk to you about how he put his fund together, share with you how he went about it, what got him excited about it, how they're running their fund, and he'll be a wealth of information for you. The week after that, we'll have Tyler in here about raising funds and doing it in compliance with the Securities and Exchange Commission, probably Regulation D. Tyler's a licensed California attorney, done a lot of private placements, a lot of private placement memorandums, a lot of fundraising activities, and that'll all be covered very, very thoroughly at the boot camp. So we're having it in Orlando in May, and then we'll be back in San Francisco in June. So if you're interested in that, notemogul.com, notemogul.com. And next week I'll have this IRR cleaned up for you, and we'll go through the return on investment and the IRR prior to Kevin getting involved on his fundraising. So thank you for attending. Look forward to seeing you next week, and check out the Note Mogul. Bye.